everybody. It gives me such great pleasure to be doing this webinar with my dear friend, Tricia Lord, and a dear colleague of mine who has been a mentor of mine for over the last 10 years, in fact, more than 10 years. And it's been a privilege to work with Tricia, to be mentored by her, and to be able to call myself her friend. And Tricia is a global and international leadership coach. She has worked in far off places like Georgia, the UK, Germany, and of course in her beloved South Africa. And she has worked with many businesses, leaders as an international coach and consultant. She is on the faculty of the Time to Think organization and really is a master coach and consultant in the thinking environment, and as well as lectures on a regular basis at the UCT Graduate School of Business and on the South African College of Applied Psychology coaching program. So I can't say enough about Tricia's expertise, what she brings as a leader, what she brings as a coach and a consultant, and as a dear colleague and friend of mine. So I'm so thrilled to have her here with us and to have all of you joining us on this webinar as we unpack this intriguing topic that Tricia is going to be speaking about and sharing on. So without any further ado, I'd like to hand you over to Tricia. And welcome, Tricia. It is just absolutely wonderful to have you here with us today.
Thank you, Heather. Thank you for that beautiful, warm introduction. It's also, and thank you to everybody who's joined us. I'm feeling slightly overwhelmed by the fact that my beloved business partner from the past, Candice Smith, has shown up on the call, who's also in Australia. And you're not the only Australian either, Candice, because Heather's nephew is joining us from Australia as well. Aaron is also in Australia. So it's just wonderful to have people here from around the globe. I feel really honored that you've decided to join us and that you've been able to set the time aside. And I'd also like to speak to who Heather is before we get stuck into our conversation, and what an enormous pleasure it is for me to be partnering with her in today's conversation. Because, oops, let me just get rid of mail programs. I was remembering, actually, as I was thinking about us doing this call together, Heather, I was thinking about the first time that I met you. And I can remember it well. And I can remember exactly the experience that I had of you, which is from the minute that I met you, I knew you to be a completely unstoppable force of nature. You'd had a really bad riding accident. You were quite seriously injured from having come off your horse. But just from the minute I met you, the way you talked about the process of recovering from that and the setback that it had been and how you were overcoming that and what your vision was for the future, it was as if the minute I met you, I thought, my goodness, this woman is so incredibly visionary and she's totally unstoppable. And I think in the work that you do in particular, which is really all about empowering business owners and entrepreneurs, the commitment that you have to a purpose-driven life is something that really stands out for me. And I know that it's something that you make available to all of your clients that you work with, is that pathway to really getting in touch with what ignites them, what inspires them, and what's going to help to propel them forward, particularly in challenging times, which seems to be something that we're doing an enormous amount of these days, facing challenging times. So I know that having you as a coach, having you as a consultant in their businesses is something that makes a huge difference to your clients in terms of their ability to be able to face the challenges and become unstoppable like you are. So thank you for the work that you do, and thank you for the invitation to be here today.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. So we're here to talk about something which is a little bit of a paradox, and it's something that I'm hugely passionate about, which is the idea that it is the first job of a leader actually to ignite independence in the people that follow them. And this is something that I feel really passionate about because I do an enormous amount of work with people who lead teams. And in fact, I spent all day yesterday in a series of one-to-one interviews with members of a team that I'm going to be doing some work with. And a lot of the team development work that I do is often when teams are facing challenges, particularly challenges in terms of the quality of relationship that they're experiencing with each other. And it really struck me yesterday as I was interviewing the person that leads this particular team that I'm going to be working with, that he's sitting with this incredible level of frustration at the moment. And he decided in the interview conversation to really take me back to the moment when he decided he wanted to apply for the job of leading this team, which was a application he was successful in. And that was back in 2017. And I was listening to him and he was sharing with me this incredible vision that he had for the team at the time. He could see the potential. He'd been working as a member of the team, and then this opportunity to apply for the team leadership role came up. And he, you know, he used words like potential and you know, what he could see was possible for the team and what he wanted to make happen. And as I listened to him, what I was listening to was a man talking about a sort of systematic disillusionment that had happened for him since 2017, and that here he is in 2021. And I subsequently discovered from the interviews, conversations that I had with the other members of his team, that he's got his two most senior people in the team, the two people apart from him who carry the most institutional knowledge of the business and have the most experience, are both on the verge of leaving if something doesn't change, and both expressing quite a lot of disillusionment in the way in which they're being managed and led by this man. And it really struck me, this sort of gap that has opened up between his vision and what he had in mind when he took on the leadership role and what's ended up happening. And I could hear as I listened to people, because that's what I do an enormous amount of. I do an enormous amount of listening to people. And it really struck me, you know, if he was able to do the same kind of listening as I was doing, what an enormous difference that would make. Because I could probably tell him at the end of that one day yesterday. So we're talking about one day with his staff as opposed to the 5 years that he's had with them since he took over leading the team. I could probably tell him exactly what he needs to know from his team in order to start getting from them what he so badly wants and isn't experiencing. And it made me wonder, you know, it's like, what is it that leaders are so afraid of in terms of listening to their people and hearing what it is that their people are trying to say? And what is it that gets in the way of that? And listening to him and listening to what he was saying in the conversation that I had with him, what I could hear was that there was an enormous amount of opinion that he had about the way things should be, and a lot of his vision for how it should be, and a lot of how he wanted people to be. There was a lot of telling going on in terms of how he was speaking about the team and referring to them. There wasn't a lot of curiosity. There wasn't a lot of inquiry. And I think that in the 33 years now that I've been working with leaders in organizations, that's one of the big sort of missing ingredients that I find myself wanting to kind of remind leaders of over and over again. And, which is, when was the last time you asked someone that you're leading a question and then shut up long enough to hear what they really thought about it?
Mm.
And do you trust the intelligence of the people that you're leading? Or do you think it's your job to set them right the whole time? Because that was definitely what was coming across yesterday in this conversation. And when I spoke to the other people on his team, that's what they're experiencing as well. One of them said that he'd been dressed down recently by this team leader in front of everyone else in the team and spoken to like a child. And I wondered, what is it that leaders are so afraid of that stop them from being more curious and more open and more able to ask questions and listen, and instead gets them stuck in this rut, I think, of telling and proclaiming and setting straight and dressing down and talking down to. I mean, two of the more senior people in the team are both actually in a place of feeling quite hugely disrespected in the way in which they're being treated. And it made me think about what I've learned about leaders over the years. And I think one of the things is that when leaders get into leadership positions, there's a lot riding on looking good and looking like they know what they're doing and wanting to be seen to know what they're doing. And I think it's almost as if we all of us get stuck in that sort of positional place of needing to show what we've got and needing to prove ourselves. That there's a lot of fear that comes along with positions of leadership, that I need to show that I deserve, that that they didn't make a mistake. There's that imposter syndrome stuff that comes up for leaders. And I need to show that they didn't make a mistake when they gave me the job. So I've got to show that I know what I'm doing. I've got to be seen to know what I'm doing. And that gets leaders very quickly stuck in a kind of a telling place. And my sense was, as I listened to the members of this man's team, that they've given up. They've given up trying to participate. They've given up trying to have a say because there isn't any room for them. That the whole leadership journey in this team is being taken up by this kind of quite fragile ego that's trying to prove itself and doesn't have the space to be able to listen and trust that in the listening, what's going to get ignited is the innate intelligence of the people that are in the team, and that they're going to know how to carry the team forward, that they don't need the leader to be telling them what to do all of the time. So those are my initial thoughts, Heather. I don't know if you want to ask a question or come in here and add to what I'm saying.
I was just thinking about the discussion that we were also having earlier on in the week around the paths to leadership and how people find themselves in these leadership roles. And, I know that from working with a number of entrepreneurs and business owners, that they have this brilliant idea that they feel so passionate about. They want to go out there and make it happen. Their product or their service is going to make a great difference in the world. But one of the things that they don't consider is the fact that they, at some point, if their business is actually going to grow and fulfill the dream that they have, that they are going to have to step into that leadership role and have a team that is around them that they are going to need to manage. And there are many roles. I know that some of us are groomed for leadership, from a young age and pushed to perform. That was certainly my upbringing was, highly performance driven and need to be the best and compete. And that cost me a lot, in terms of my health and some of the, challenges that I faced out of pushing myself so hard. And that often we find ourselves in leadership roles, and yet we haven't developed, we haven't had any training or teaching or educating or learning on what does it actually mean to be a leader. We find ourselves in these situations, whether we good at our jobs, and therefore because we're good at our jobs, we thrust into these leadership positions that we're not necessarily prepared for, or that maybe we don't feel that we've fully chosen ourselves.
Yeah, and I mean the reality is never the same as the picture that you had going in. I mean, that was one of the things that stood out really clearly to me from the conversation yesterday, was this man had such a compelling picture as he applied for the team leadership position. He had this vision for what it was going to be like. But the reality is that he's working in they're a technology business. They're delivering to an absolutely massive client. It's an operational production environment where no matter how much you plan for what's going to happen on any given day, what actually does happen on any given day is different to that. It's hugely, I mean, you're talking about performance driven, it's massively performance driven environment. And so everyone in that team is almost perpetually under some form of stress. Now we know, don't we, that stress doesn't produce the best in any of us. So if I look at what this man's real job is, it's actually to try and create an environment that reduces the amount of stress that his staff is under as much as he possibly can. I would say as a leader, that's his job, to try and take the stress out of the environment as much as he possibly can, because we know, don't we, from the field of neuroscience, that the more stress and the more stressful the environment is, the less well people can think, and the less well people can make good choices and make good decisions and solve the challenging stuff that's coming up unexpectedly that doesn't fit with what the plan for the day was. But because he doesn't trust his team, and because he's got this, it becomes this vicious circle, doesn't it? Because he's got this failed vision that he's now living with. It hasn't turned out the way he expected it to. It doesn't fit the picture that he had for what being a leader was going to be like. The reality is a lot less glamorous, I think. And just as we were waiting for everybody to join the call today, we were talking around the sort of current circumstances that we've got in South Africa at the moment, and one of the people on the call was Waran was referring to the challenge of global leadership at the moment with the COVID pandemic. I mean, leading is it's a stressful, complex, challenging job. And if actually what you really most need to do is try and remove the stress as much as you possibly can from the environment, in order for the staff that you've got, who are the ones that are at the coalface dealing with the crisis situations as they emerge, the unexpected stuff that you couldn't have planned for, if where your attention is as the leader in that situation is on how am I doing, am I getting it right, do people believe in me as the leader, if it's that ego focused stuff that you're dealing with, you're just going to be adding to the stress in the environment rather than creating this as calm as possible space. I mean, it's a huge ask, you know. I mean, try being a world leader at the moment with the pandemic, to try and create as calm a possible space that says back to the people that you're leading, I trust you. I've hired you for a reason. It's because I believe in your capacity to be able to get the job done. Now, how can I create an environment around you that gives you the best possible chance of thinking well for yourself so that you're able to independently create solutions to the issues that you face? Because the more, as a leader, I run around trying to be the one that's coming up with all of the solutions all of the time, the more of a headless chicken I become, and the more of a headless chicken I turn everyone that I'm leading into. And I think that that's one of the consistent issues that I see facing leaders. I'd love to know from people listening, from people on the call, what are your thoughts about what I'm saying and this conundrum that I'm raising? What do you think? What have you found in your work? What have you noticed about this? And does anybody have any specific question that the points that I'm raising has triggered for you? Be lovely to get some interaction going.
I would say that I'm a big fan of Jim Collins, Good to Great. I think that one of the aspects of that I particularly like is the idea that leadership isn't getting everybody to agree with you. It's to be able to have the conversations that end with a decision that everybody agrees to or commits behind, even if they don't agree with it, but they've been heard. And it's not just one person's sort of like dictatorial thing. And I think that's for me, that is my biggest challenge, is to actually, in a sense, get out of other people's way so that they can express themselves. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think you've put that beautifully, Sean. And I think that what you are calling conversation, I'll come to you just in a second now, Robert, what you're calling conversation in the work of the thinking environment, which is work that myself and Heather and Candice, who's here from Australia, are all engaged in, we would call that dialogue. And we would specifically call it dialogue because in a thinking environment, when we talk about dialogue, we think about people thinking together.
Yeah.
And how do we create the conditions for people to think well together? And I think that a big part of, probably one of the finest leadership skills, in fact, is the capacity to be able to create that space for dialogue. Yeah. Which involves being genuinely interested in what other people think, exactly as you've said, and not just getting stuck in that sort of here's my point of view role, but being able to introduce your point of view, but then follow that through with questions which are genuinely about wanting to know what the others think, and being able to make the space where people feel that what they think is something that the leader genuinely is interested in. Thanks, Sean. Robert, you wanted to add something?
So more a contribution than a question. So my work is mostly with sales teams, so sales leaders, MDs, GMs, sales directors, sales managers. And most of them, and I'm generalizing a bit, but most of them have been promoted because they were very good salespeople. And somebody more senior to them says, you're great. Can you lead? Can you build a team? Or can you? And very few of them are trained in the leadership part of the role. And a sales manager is absolutely a sales leader. And it's quite interesting to listen to your views about the training on listening. And the good ones are the good listeners, because they create that safe place for the sales team to be able to express, and they build that culture of we. Yeah. And the ones that need external help in the consulting world are the ones that haven't had the training. So listening is such an important part of the sales process at any layer, because whether you're leading or just selling, it's all in the ears. It really should be.
Yeah. And it takes a certain kind of confidence, I think, Robert, to be the person that can listen. It takes that kind of confidence of not needing to be seen to be the one that has all of the ideas. You know, there's a kind of a maturity and a confidence that, you know, if a brilliant idea comes from one of my team members, that's actually great. That's actually a win. That's actually a plus. It doesn't always have to be, you know, it's that needing to be seen to be the one that came up with the idea that I think is one of the hugest pitfalls in leadership. And I think that, you know, that goes all the way back to, and I loved what you said, Robert, about, you know, people that sort of accidentally end up as leaders because they were good at the job. I mean, this is one of the things that Heather and I were discussing earlier in the week, is the number of leaders that I've met where if you ask them what their leadership journey was, they say, oh, well, I was a really, really good accountant. And then they made me, and then they put me in charge of the team. And now I just want to get back to doing the numbers, because the numbers are really nice and simple and straightforward. And I'm an expert in the numbers. But now instead, I've got all of these complex beings that I don't understand, and I don't know how to deal with them, and I don't know how to meet their needs, and I don't know how to get the best out of them. And as you've said, they haven't had the training in that. And so that knocks people's confidence, the very thing that we should be doing, which is creating confident leaders that know how to sit back, step back, make space for, are often people that just got thrown in at the deep end and they've been paddling furiously ever since. Yeah. Rupesh, I'd love to know what you think.
I think what you have just touched are the nerves of the entire system, which starts from the saying that man is a social animal. And if he is a social animal, then he must learn. And I think you have very rightly put that you have been given one mouth and 2 ears. And I head from the arena of, being a CTO, the founding CTO of Smart Management Consultancy, which works on all-round projects in, technology transformations, agile transformations, to mindset change of very senior managements. What we have seen is that when they asked me to, address a particular, gamut of very senior leaders on a mindset change table, nobody is ready to hear. And there, the only essence of point which I develop and delve in giving them some kind of exercises and tools to understand that, first of all, you soul search yourself, then speak and make a rectangle so that your lower is your soul. This is your mouth. It goes into that ear and goes to that soul, and that comes back. So that rectangle, when it minimizes and everything comes to the center spot, that is the time you are a performing team. When it comes to the diagonal. Otherwise, when you have a discrepancy between your soul and what you say, and he has discrepancies in his soul and what he says, it can be larger or smaller, kinds of, different dimensions. But ultimately, whenever, first of all, you this one, and then you try to make this distance shorter. So then people understand. For that, what is essential is your 2 ears. You hear to them more and more and more. And also, ultimately, any transformation, first thing we happen to do is a soul search session, which leads to a process change documentation. They don't know about what is going in their team's ground level processes. And then they start speaking.
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely. And I don't know if I'm picking up on or the piece of what you're saying that I want to pick up on is what you would emphasize. But I think what comes through to me from what you're saying, Rupesh, and this is something that I've said for years and years and years and years now, is for me, there is no distinction between personal development and leadership development. They're one and the same thing. And, you know, if people don't understand themselves, if they don't understand what makes them tick, if they don't understand where they feel insecure, if they don't understand where they're going to get defensive and shut down, and therefore not be able to make space for the people that they're leading, the degree to which they don't understand themselves is going to be the degree to which they're going to be hampered in terms of being good leaders. So I
In
would
fact,
say,
if I just add on one small thing is that we have been regularly delving into a concept of which comes from Indian epics, which Swami Vivekananda proposed, and that was 4 yogas. And it has a component called karma yoga, where karma, I think everybody in the world knows what is the philosophy of karma, that what you do is actually what you get. But how
yes,
to define your karma, connecting it to the soul, but still dissociating with all the agony of past and future. So that is the element. And you know, we have regularly every 7:30 in the evening, another 4 hours from now on Wednesdays, we have a session where we invite top global leadership to come join us and understand those concepts more, so that you open up your mind that every living being and component of your team is equal, and you should be transparent enough to hear him out.
yeah,
Because till you don't do that and you do it with an open mind, because a sweeper can tell you, okay, build the lifts from outside instead of, you know, cutting everything from inside. We all know that story. So basically,
yeah,
small things can help you, you know, transform your environments. And when you are so totally connected, like not like a father, but like a brother, who anybody can come and share, and your offices should be totally open.
yeah,
So, like, you know, we often have these, you know, wooden compartments, or, you know, like a tray of vaccinations, you see, like that, everybody is separate, separate, separate. Instead, we started proposing you should have glass walls, and instead of walls, you should have the ability that a person stands and says, hey, I need you for a minute. Can you come? Come, let's sit and let's
yeah,
discuss it. And smaller meeting rooms, you know, smaller coffee tables, smaller discussion panels. And as we work a lot on Scrum and Scrum bands, so we have almost every day morning a daily meeting. So what is discussed is more of not what, you know, is me, but what the team has to deliver. You
yeah.
all hear those
Thank,
aspects out. So
thank you, Rupesh. Granville, what would you like to add?
Unmute myself. Yeah, thanks. I think Rupesh just touched on the point that I wanted to make, is the creating an environment where your team feels free to, you know, actually share and contribute. You know, where creativity can take place, but not only a meeting or a scheduled time where it will be information that you share, but rather
Yeah,
opportunities where they can be creative. You know, make sure that you set time where people can just come with ideas, or just brainstorm new innovation, or, you know, any contribution, and never, even if it's not the ideal, never shut it down, but rather help people to further develop it. And I think that that is powerful in leadership. The other one is, as a leader, we should also, you know, be the first to admit when we're wrong, because that's not a sign of weakness, but rather a sign of strength. Because often people think leadership means that you are, you know, the most perfect person. And also what you've pointed out, Tisha, is that the most important skill to have as a leader is listening rather than talking. And I think often that is mistaken, because leaders often are considered to be people that are very eloquent, rather powerful speakers, but it's more people that are more powerful listeners rather than speakers, to understand first. You know, that's really what I am taking away from this. Yeah.
thanks, Granville. I really want to, and I'll come to you in a second, Cheryl. I really want to pick up on a couple of things that you've contributed there, Granville. I think one of the things that it's really that I really want to get across in this conversation is that leadership is a way of being. It's not what you do, it's who you are. So, you know, what really came through for me as I was listening to your words, Granville, is, you know, is that you're calling out for a way of being a leader that creates this environment that says back to people, your ideas are welcome. I want to know what you think. And that's not something, you know, we can do brainstorming. You know, we can get everybody in the room and we can sit down and we can say, okay, we're going to do brainstorming. But if who you're being towards people in that situation is one in which the message you're sending out is, and you better make sure that what you say agrees with me. You know, if we go back to what you were saying, Sean, and you'd better make sure that what you're saying doesn't make me look stupid, or, you know, that's actually what people are going to pick up on. You know, you can have "let's brainstorm" written above your desk, but if who you're being is, and make sure that it fits with what I already want to hear, you're not going to get brainstorming. So it's really about, and you know, this is the, you know, in the work of the thinking environment, one of the things that we work with people on is that what creates an environment in which people can show up and be at their best. So, you know, if I go back to the title that we gave this webinar, which is Igniting Independent Followers. So creating an environment in which people can show up and be who they are and bring their expertise, bring their ideas, bring their creativity, bring their brilliant solutions to the table. You're only going to create that environment through who you're being. You're not going to create that by saying, we're going to do this. You're going to create it by being someone who, when somebody comes up with an idea that you don't agree with, because it doesn't fit with what you already know, how you respond to that person's idea is by going, wow, that's interesting. I've never thought of it like that. And that doesn't, you know, I wouldn't have initially looked at it in that way, but I'm really interested. I'd love to know more. Tell me more. Tell me how you've come up with that idea. I'd love to get more of your thinking behind it, so that who you're being as a leader is an invitation for people to contribute and participate, rather than saying that's what you want, but then being someone who actually wants people to toe the line. Yeah, Cheryl, what do you think?
You're on mute, Cheryl.
I think Cheryl's actually frozen as well.
I beg your pardon.
Oh no, that's fine.
Yeah.
Right.
My thinking is that in order to create a space for your employees to act independently, to feel comfortable in their role, and to be confident enough to express their opinions and their creativity, they should initially have received very clear and succinct communication in terms of what their role is. So a very well described job description is what should form the basis of their ability to grow and to feel confident within their space. Only then will they feel the freedom to offer opinions and to help grow the concept, whatever it might be. And they will then be able to take ownership of their role because they know exactly what they've been placed there to do. So I think it's very important as a leader to be very clear, very succinct in a job description for every employee, particularly in jobs where the roles are very intertwined with one another, like in an administrative area where workers, employees are actually doing a number of tasks. It might be very frustrating for that employee to actually develop creativity because they're merely touching areas here, there, and everywhere to try and cope with the load they've given. Whereas if they are comfortable and confident in their particular role, they can definitely bring new ideas to the table. And my second point is actually a question that I'd like some feedback on, if there is time, is How close to your employee do you feel is right for you to become in their personal space? Sorry, that was a bit garbled. I find it extremely important to reach the person and know about their circumstances, their burdens, what load they're carrying with them to work, their family circumstances. I like personally to connect on that level. And I know there are many leaders who find that far too intrusive. They find that being a leader excludes them from that personal contact. But I personally cannot lead anyone unless I know everything about them. And to get that employee to share on that level takes a lot of time and trust from both parties. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks for both of those contributions, Cheryl. And, you know, isn't it extraordinary that, I mean, I don't know about you and in the work that you do, but as I said, I've been in this game for 33 years now. And if I had money for every time someone in a team has told me that they need a clearer job description, I'd be retired by now. I seriously would. It's absolutely extraordinary to me that is how often that is a source of upset in teams. I don't really know what I'm supposed to be doing. It is, I mean, it's really extraordinary. And, you know, one of the 10 components of a thinking environment is the component of information. And I think what you raised there is so pertinent, that if we don't know what's expected of us, we can't be at our best if that's not clear to us. And particularly, exactly as you said, at those points where roles overlap, you know. And the number of times when I've worked with teams in breakdown, which is one of my areas of specialization, that's been the source of the trouble, is, you know, the assumptions that people are making, and they're not clarifying. In fact, in these interview conversations that I had yesterday, one of the more junior people in the team said to me, you know, the problem around here is everybody's making their own minds up about what's going on and nobody's checking it out with each other. That's actually what he said to me. He said, everybody's just constructing narratives in their own minds, but nobody's actually checking it out with each other as to what the other person thinks is going on. So yeah, if we could replace assumptions with facts that were commonly agreed upon across the board, the amount of clarity that would give people to then, as you say, become creative. And, you know, in terms of your question, my mantra for my business for the last 33 years has been relationship is the source of results. That's it. Pure and simple. Relationship is the source of results. And if leaders understood that, and if leaders realized that every time they invest their time, their energy, their care, their attention into the relationship that they have with their staff, that's going to lead them directly to the results that they're looking for. Not telling people what to do, but getting to know who they are and getting to understand them. I mean, I'm sure many of you on the call have seen the iceberg model as a model for understanding human behavior. The idea that we can think about human beings and human behaviors in the same way that we would use the metaphor of an iceberg. And that there's, you know, about 10% of the iceberg. I mean, this could be changing as we speak, but about 10% of the iceberg is what's available above the waterline. And that 10%, if you think about human beings, that 10% that's available above the waterline, that's the stuff that people do. That's the actions they take and the results that they produce. But you walk into most organizations, and Doc, I know that you want to take a turn. I'm coming to you in just a moment. You walk into any organization, and I promise you that 90% or more of the conversation that people are having with each other is around, did you do what you said you were going to do? Why haven't you done what you said you were going to do? You said you were going to do this. I haven't seen the report. You said it was going to be on my desk by 9 o'clock on Monday morning. It's 9:30. I haven't seen it yet. What's up? Like, we're talking to each other as if we are human doings. as if that's all we are, is the 10% that can be seen above the waterline. And that's how leaders talk to their staff so much of the time. Whereas in actual fact, what's driving that 10% you can see above the waterline is the 90% that's hidden. It's the not visible stuff. It's the thoughts, the feelings, the assumptions, the the values, the fears, the history that drives that person and is driving who they are. And that's what's shaping what's happening above the waterline. But if you don't get good at getting below the waterline with people, which is what I'm reading into what you were saying, Cheryl, you're never going to understand what motivates a person, and you're never going to be able to get the best out of them. And that brings us full circle all the way back round to listening again, which is that you've got to be interested. You've got to be interested in your people, interested enough to shut up and listen to them. Because if you listen to people, you'll find out everything that you need to know, particularly if you promise not to interrupt them, which is the first component of a thinking environment. Doc, I want to come to you. I'm aware of the time. So Doc and then Aaron, and that's probably going to take us up to nearly when we need to close. Doc, what did you want to add?
Yeah, great conversations. If I was taking notes, I think my notebook would be full. Yeah, I was intrigued by something you said earlier on about the professionals who find themselves being thrust into leadership, and then suddenly finding this murky space that they are struggling to deal with. And I just wanted to contribute that, one of the things that I have found to be helpful in creating that space where collectively the team comes together is when they commit to actually learning together. And you've spoken about listening, where the leader understands that he doesn't know everything, but he is prepared to learn from his professional. And he encourages them also to continuously learn and bring to the table and share what it is that they have learned, what they have discovered from the mistakes that they've made, and from the breakthroughs that they've made, that they are collectively increasing their collective intelligence as a team.
Yeah.
And it helps them to collectively work together as a team. And then all of these issues that were just raised by Cheryl, that even the issues that may be holding others back from being more participative in the team because maybe they've got certain issues, you creating that space as a leader for people to actually open up about their fears, about their excitement, about even crazy ideas. People not to be afraid to put forward crazy ideas, because as we know that, the greatest innovations come from what used to be really ludicrous things. But now we have embraced them. Somebody said that the one who invented a telephone, he must have smoked something to imagine himself speaking to somebody on the other side. But here it is now, we're communicating so easy. Yeah. So for me, really, the leader embracing and actually leading that charge of learning within the team creates that space for vibrant.
Yeah, I think that's really beautiful. I mean, what a beautiful idea, leader as learner. Such a beautiful idea. And that goes right back to what I was saying, Doc, about a way of being, that if you're being led by somebody who makes learning the way we are around here, we're a learning team, we're a learning organization. And that requires a certain kind of humility, doesn't it? The not needing to know. Absolutely beautiful. Aaron, what did you want to add?
Hi, Trisha. Thank you so much for having me on this call. It's been really so insightful listening to everyone. Just my 2 cents on everything. I think at the end of the day, it comes down, as a leader, to have a high level of emotional intelligence, where I find that I'm lucky enough where I work in teams as part of my job, but I have to be adaptable where, I'm changing teams all the time. I'll be working with someone in the States for 2 weeks, with someone in South Africa and someone in the Philippines. And we've all got to figure out how to work together, and I've got to manage that. What I've found through my personal experiences is that people want to feel valued. And when they do feel valued, that's when you get results. Also not managing to micromanage everyone and really trust in them and give them that support that they need in order for them to carry out their task, essentially. Also, in terms of the iceberg analogy, obviously you have your base teams that you work with, that I work with here in Melbourne, and like I 110% agree with you, where you only see that 10% level stuff, and when you really get down to the bottom of it, when you get to know someone, your quality of your work, the quality of your team improves because you all know each other. But I also think it's really important to set boundaries where, you as a leader, all your team members and employees on this lower in-depth level now. But what does that mean? How is there boundary set between, when you're meeting deadlines, when you're not meeting deadlines, or is there a friend line or not a friend line? So yeah, I think it's really, really, really important to establish that line professionally.
Yeah, absolutely. Well said. And one of the components of a thinking environment, I don't know how much Heather's shared the thinking environment with you, Aaron, but one of the components of a thinking environment is the component of equality. And one of the ways we define the component of equality is keeping agreements and boundaries. And I think that it's a really beautiful paradox that you're inquiring into there, which is, on the one hand, we've got what Cheryl raised, which is this, how important it is that leaders take time to really get to know their people, and to get to know their people as people, not as, cogs in the wheel of delivery, but as human beings, because that's what we are first and foremost, is human beings, not human doings. And on the other hand, what you're raising, which is, and there comes a point in time as the leader where you have to draw lines, and you have to say, we can go out for a beer in the evening, but actually right now, right here, you were supposed to have delivered XYZ and I don't have it, and I need to have a conversation with you about that, and I need to be able to be straight with you about that. So it's a huge balancing act. And of course, we also need to take into account that people are going to have different styles, aren't they? We've all got different personality styles. We've all got different needs. Some of us are much more interpersonal. Some of us are much more people focused. Some of us are much more task focused. So I think that's another one of the huge challenges as leaders is getting to, to go right back to what Rupesh and I were talking about, which is, you have to get to know yourself well. You've got to know yourself well, and you've got to be the leader that you are, and you've got to be unapologetic about that, and unafraid. I think fearless leadership is the thing that we're really looking for here. And when your attention is focused on how am I doing and am I good enough, because there's low levels of emotional intelligence, as you were saying, then that's going to get in the way of you being able to be the kind of person that can make space for others and ignite independent followers. Heather, I'm conscious of time.
Yes. We've got 5 minutes. So I think if you could just wrap up, and I think what I've been thinking about a lot, just around fear and our fear of not looking good, that we're not really taught in schools to think for ourselves. We cringe with embarrassment if we put up our hands and we get the answer wrong. And so I just wondered, as we were wrapping up, and I am going to want to share with all of you some of Trisha's upcoming courses and her link to her website, which I've placed in the chat. But you will be able to just scan a code with your cell phone camera that will take you through to the website as well to connect with Trisha. So that we'll finish with that. But I just wondered, Trisha, just in terms of this fearless leader, what do you think are the highlights of what a fearless leader is really able to create and enable?
Oh, thank you. That's such a lovely question. Well, I think when we're fearless, we can connect with each other, you know, when we're not afraid of who we are, and we're not focused on what we have to prove, where we've come to terms with ourselves, and that includes both our strengths and our weaknesses. And we're unapologetic about that. So when we're fearless, we can connect with each other. And when we can connect with each other, we can release the magic that happens between human beings when they're connecting with each other, which is the creativity, the innovation, the self-expression. You know, I mean, it's always completely baffled me that you know, people go to interview processes, and in the interview they do their very best to be their most sparkly, shiny version of themselves, and then they get into the job, and then they spend their entire time in the job hoping nobody finds out who they really are. But actually, we need to know who you really are. We want you to be who you really are. If you're not being who you really are, then who are you? Why are you here? You know, we hired you, so we want you, and you is never going to be perfect. And I think when you've got fearless leaders who aren't trying to be perfect all the time, what they release is fearless followers. And then what you're going to get is everybody being able to be their most intelligent selves, and you're releasing the intelligence of the people around you. And it's the combination of people's intelligence coming together that creates the next brilliant idea that nobody's yet thought of. It's not one person's idea. It's our coming together, the intelligence of all of us coming together, that can create the magic. So that's what I think.
Beautiful. So I always say 1 + 1 doesn't equal 2, it equals 11. And I think that when we're able to fearlessly think together and be with each other in such a powerful way, we really do come up with the most incredible solutions to the challenges that we are facing. So Rupesh, before we jump onto you, I just wanted to share this because we are on the hour, and I do like us to keep our agreements and boundaries. This is what is coming up for Trisha in Trisha's upcoming workshops. And she has her foundation course on the 14th and 15th of October, and then her thinking partnership on the 1st, 2nd, and 29th of November. Trisha, would you like to just fill us in a little bit about what is in the foundation course and what is the thinking partnership?
The 2-day foundation course is an exploration of all the applications of a thinking environment. So it's a comprehensive overview of all the different ways in which you can apply the thinking environment. And it really focuses primarily on what I would call the group applications. So in the foundation course, we explore what a thinking environment is and why it matters. We look at the 10 components of a thinking environment. We explore the 4 building blocks, which are rounds and thinking pairs and dialogue and open discussion. And then we look at how you can combine all of those ingredients together in order to run meetings which engage everybody's thinking and enable the outcome of the meeting to be accomplished and good decisions to be made. We also look at how to apply the thinking environment to delivering compelling presentations that keep your audience engaged. And we explore a process called the Time to Think Council, which is a way of being able to offer experience and wisdom and information to somebody who has an issue that they are requiring support with. In the 2-day foundation course, we also will take a look at the thinking session, which is the one-on-one approach to helping someone think through an issue or a topic of their choice and to progress their own fully independent thinking. The 3-day Thinking Partnership course gets at what I call the beating heart of the thinking environment. The Thinking Partnership course is an opportunity for people to learn how to be thinking partners. A thinking partner is someone who knows how to partner somebody else's fully independent thinking. In the Thinking Partnership course, we learn how to listen to someone over an extended period of time and how to keep them thinking well for themselves. It's an in-depth exploration that answers the question, what are the conditions that we can provide for someone in order to enable them to access their finest, fully independent thinking, to be able to generate previously unthought of solutions to the topics that are most important in their lives? How do we help someone to keep thinking well for themselves? In the Thinking Partnership course, participants will learn how to get someone started in a thinking session and how to keep them going. And in the event that the thinker requires it, how to support them to be able to surface and remove untrue limiting assumptions that stand in the way of their being able to accomplish what it is that they're wanting to achieve with regards to the important issues and topics in their lives. The Thinking Partnership course is also an incredible personal development tool, because in the course, participants will all have thinking sessions. So as well as learning how to be able to help somebody else think well for themselves, you also get to be able to explore your own topics in depth and move forward to new ideas, new decisions, and powerful creativity.
And you're welcome to just take a screenshot of this, and you can then hold your camera over the code and it will take you through to her website, or email Laurence at braveheartlife.co.za, and Laurence will be in touch with any questions or to answer any questions that you might have, or to sign you up for Trisha's beautiful, beautiful newsletter and her thought provokers that come out that really provoke our thinking and get us to really think beyond our current mindset and allow us to go beyond our current thinking, which I always deeply, deeply appreciate. So Rupesh, we've got 1 minute. If you'd like to just say what it is that you'd like to say, and then we're going to wrap up.
I have a very small point in this, that whenever you have a person who is approaching you or not approaching you, or you want to approach a department or a person, better is to have a well recognition of who's that critical stakeholder, sit with him and start off with a topic which is totally personal. When you have a connection, you have a bonding, you have a gelling, and before bringing someone in suddenly, you make him gel him, and like it was told also in the job description thing, but ultimately more and more people, when you bring in after an orientation of their communication skills and letting them know it's an open environment. For example, whenever we have a forum, we let them know this is a zero criticism tolerance, maximum appreciation, fun-filled creativity forum where everybody is equal to come, sit, chat, sing, and do whatever you want. It will bring up the idea.
Yeah, I love that. Zero criticism, maximum appreciation environment. I'll go for that. That's wonderful.
So just thank you so much, Trisha. Deepest appreciation for your beautiful expertise and the way that you share these incredible insights that you have around the thinking environment and around leadership, and that You are one of the most fearless leaders that I have ever met. And I deeply appreciate that about you, and that it allows me to let go of my own fears and step into that fearless space for myself. So thank you for being here today and for sharing all of your insights and your wisdom. And thank you to all of you for such a wonderfully interactive session. So all of your questions and your sharing, it really makes a difference when we can all think together and think about this very, very important ideas around leadership, particularly at the time that we are living in. So with that, I'm going to stop the recording. Trisha, would you like to just add anything before I stop to say goodbye?
No, just to say you're the hostess with the mostest. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Wonderful space. Thanks, everybody, for being here.
Wonderful session. Thanks, everybody. Take care.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Trisha. Thank you, Heather.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.